Rit wondered what's going on currently at Zoltan, but since Tis hadn't sent them a message, it meant that Van hasn't found the airship yet. While watching the bees and flowers, Rudy heard some voices of kids from nearby, and they decided to check them out of curiosity. The trio found some kids training, preparing for the time that they acquire their blessings. The kids immediately recognized Red as the doctor who helped Kate, and they were all looking up to him. So Rudy thought that he was a hit with the kids, while Red offered to supervise their training, which the kids happily accepted. Red also helped. He noticed that one of the kids has a gladiator's blessing. He explained that it was a powerful blessing that produces the best adventurers, and he offered to teach him how to train according to his blessing. The kid was amazed that Red could tell what blessing he had. He thought Red was a wizard. The other kids heard their conversation and wanted to train under Red as well. However, one of the villagers arrived, asking Red and the kids to return home as they had found ogre kings in the village outskirts, and one villager had already suffered from their attack, so they would start patrolling to avoid further casualties. Red offered to help, saying his group could also fight. The villager wanted to refuse, but Rudy showed them how powerful she was, so the villagers, including the kids, were amazed as they gathered around Rudy. The group failed to find any signs of the ogre king, so Red apologized for dragging them with him. However, Rit could understand his concern for the kids, and she wanted to also take their kids on a walk someday, while Rudy thought it would be really fun to join when she heard this. At the same time, they noticed the tracks on the grass left by the ogre king, but they were confused as they thought that the ogre king shouldn't be intelligent enough to walk on the grass to hide its tracks. Red relayed the bad news to the villagers. They also explained that these ogre kings were unordinary as they scouted the village first. They also declared that he and Rit would get rid of them. However, the villagers still looked worried, but they finally felt relieved when Rudy declared that she would be protecting them. The kids wondered if Rudy had a champion's blessing because of her strength. She refused to answer, but she declared her desire to protect them was unrelated to her blessing, as she refused to follow her blessing's urges and act on her own free will. Meanwhile, Tis visited Red's apothecary to talk to Yarandrala. Yarandrala asked how things were looking, so Tis explained that although nothing has happened yet, she noticed how different Van was compared to Rudy, as Rudy's hero blessing suppressed her emotions while Van was really expressive, and she had a bad feeling that handing over the airship was not a good idea. She also thought that it was necessary to continue observing Van to find out what kind of person he is. Yarandrala agreed, but she reminded Tis to be careful. Afterwards, Tis asked, "How are things in the apothecary?" Yarandrala replied that it was fine, but what worried her were the plant's strange behaviors ever since Van arrived. She could tell that it wasn't about Van, but she knew that a terrifying disaster was drawing closer, and it had entered Zoltan with Van. At the same time, the people's attention was all on Van as they walked around the town. This annoyed Lavender, but Esther reprimanded her, as it was normal for the people to take an interest in the hero. Lavender didn't want to listen to Esther, so instead she asked Van if they would go sightseeing. Van declined, as he explained how he was still trying to figure out what Demis wanted him to do next. However, they were interrupted when a little orc approached them and clung to Van's leg. Tantor reprimanded the little orc, while Esther was worried that Van would harm him. However, Van happily talked to the kids, and he even agreed to come meet the other kids living in the church when Tanta asked him. And this completely surprised Esther and Lavender. The priest and Mistrom thanked Van before explaining that they were taking care of the kids who were separated from their parents at the church. Van immediately offered to help make the kids' lives a little better, and Tanta guided him to the room of the kids, who wanted to hear about his adventures. Mistrom thought that Van was really kind. Esther hoped that he would be like this all the time, as she apologized for his behavior during the welcoming party. She explained how Van's innocence made him blind towards people, and the fact that he was actually gentle with kids was new to her. Van told the kids how he had been in various places fighting different foes and that he even fought an evil dragon recently. The kids asked if he was scared, but he declared that the hero doesn't feel fear, as it was the hero's job to valiantly fight and never give up, no matter the situation. One of the kids declared that he wanted to join Van's adventure. Lavender mocked him, but Van actually asked if they had awakened their blessings. He also explained that they couldn't decide how they would live until they knew what their blessing was. This confuses the kids, as Tanta has already decided to be a carpenter, and Tanta was hoping to receive a blessing that would help with his work. Van declared that it was for Lord Demis to decide, as he could even receive a champion's blessing. However, Tanta declared that he would still want to be a carpenter to build a comfortable and safe home that would bring joy to everyone. However, Van corrected him, saying that it wasn't joy but decadence, as joy could only be obtained by living in accordance with their blessing, which is the will of Demis. Then he thought it was his duty as a hero to change the mindset of the people of Zoltan. Meanwhile, Red and Rit were still looking for the Ogre Kings. Red realized that it was necessary that they wipe out the Ogre Kings to prevent the news of it from reaching Zoltan, as it could cause Van to come to the village and try to get rid of them himself. At the same time, Red noticed the beast's presence coming their way. Although an Ogre King ambushed them, Red slayed the beast with no problem. But they were confused to see the beast holding a weapon, as they had never seen this before. The other Ogre Kings had also appeared, and Rit was surprised to see them use martial arts and magic. Red still easily slayed the beast, but he was also surprised that it had multiple blessings. Despite the Ogre King's multiple blessings, Red and Rit managed to wipe them out, and while Red was inspecting their corpse, he realized that their weapons were pieces of ancient elven ruins. Rit also noticed the ancient elven writings on the Ogre King's body. Red thought he had seen it before, and they also recalled that the gem beast also had multiple blessings, so they wondered if these beasts were linked to ancient elves. Meanwhile, Van's group was about to leave the church, but before they did, Mistram asked Esta to stay by Van's side as his guide and lead him to the right path. Esta apologized for making Van wait before telling him how relieved she was to see his positive interaction with the kids. Van explained that the kids had to be protected until they awakened to their blessings and knew their roles. Esta asked if it was his will or if his hero's blessing was telling him to do it. However, Van explained that, as a hero, his feelings are always aligned with his blessings and Demi's will. At the same time, Lubo arrived with Tis. Tis introduced herself before Lubo explained that she was a top adventurer and that she would guide them to their next destination. Esta introduced herself before greeting Tis, but Lavender interrupted them and asked Tis if she was observing them during the party. Tis admitted this before explaining that she was working on her second job. Lavender refused to believe her, but Tis explained how she was saving as she wanted to visit Camillo Hot Spring, which is among the top 3 hot springs in Avalon. Tis passionately told Lavender about it, and she actually seemed interested in it, but she thought it was stupid that humans would spend so much money on a hot spring. Meanwhile, Red had prepared another pot of curry for dinner, which made both Rit and Rudy happy. But Rit wanted to bathe first, so Red offered to prepare her bath. However, Rudy stopped him. She thought he was tired from the battle, and she wanted to do something for the couple, so she offered to prepare the bath and help Rit wash. Rudy helped Rit wash her back, but she had no idea how to wash the front. She also explained how she wanted to show her appreciation to the couple, as they had done so much for her. Afterwards, she congratulated Rit on their engagement. She was happy that Red had found happiness with Rit, and she was looking forward to their marriage. Rit was touched by her words, and she declared that she would always be by Rudy's side, together with Red. After their dinner, Mr. Crawley Wally brought them a letter from Tis, informing them that she would lead the way as Van headed out to take down Dantak, the hill giant. Red was confident that Tis would be fine, but they thought it would be a different story if Van found out that she was hiding her identity. However, Rudy asked Mr. Crawley Wally to come to her if Tis was in any sort of trouble, and she declared that she wouldn't let anyone hurt her best friend, be it the church or the hero. Dantak was the only hill giant left after the battle with Van. Dantak couldn't understand Van's reason for killing his tribe, so Van explained that it was against Demi's will that they were refusing to kill and hiding inside their castle, and he declared that he was the hero, the slayer of evil. Dantak thought Van was some crazy kid before he was beheaded. Lavender cheered for Van's victory, while Tis thought that he was nuts. Afterwards, countless salt dragon were shown traveling somewhere. Tis was attracted by the delicious smell coming from the food Esta was preparing. Esta invited Tis to join her for dinner, and she agreed when she heard that everyone else was away. Esta removed her mask, and she recalled how they used to sit around campfires in the past. Tis also remembered, but she thought it was the first time she had cooked. Esta explained that she acquired a cooking skill similar to Red. She was following in his footsteps, but not just in cooking, as she also wanted to be an excellent support and guide for the hero. However, she is starting to think that she was lacking. But Tis disagreed, saying that the issue was more with the hero. To improve Esta's mood, Tis brought up Albert. She explained that Albert sounded proud to work alongside her, and that he misses her. Esta was really elated after hearing this. She declared that she misses him too and that she looks forward to meeting him again. Esta felt shy after realizing what she had said, while Tis immediately thought that she was in love. Red's group received some curry bread from the villagers, and despite eating curry for all their meals, Rit still happily ate it. At the same time, the villagers stare in amazement at the group of Pegasus flying over the village. However, Rit could tell that they seemed to be escaping, and Rudy noticed that something was coming. Meanwhile, Esta lectured Van about the danger of the Fairy King's mind control magic, but Lavender interrupted her, and Van stated that he would use it to guide the evildoers to the path of faith. Esta thought it was inappropriate, and that the shield should be sealed away instead. However, Lavender declared that the shield was Van's, and the way he uses it is none of her business. At the same time, the residents of Zoltan were arranging a celebration as they were about to hand over the airship to Van. Mistrom had a bad feeling about it, but the mayor thought Van would be glad. Mogram was also present, although he was worried and excited about his wife who was about to give birth. Godwin and Gons were also drinking at the party. They were happy that Godwin's business with the Zoogs was going well. But Godwin was pissed when they asked him to wine and dine them. Mal was pissed at seeing their behavior. She couldn't believe that they couldn't behave and be of help like the kids. The little girl thought Van would like the food they prepared. But Tanta was worried as he still remembered Van's words, calling his joy as decadence. At the same time, Van's group arrived, and the mayor immediately told them about the airship. He also urged Van to raise a toast at the party. However, Van wasn't happy to see the celebration, saying that it wasn't necessary. Esta tried to de-escalate the situation. She thanked the mayor for their efforts, but she explained that they couldn't join the celebrations because of their commitment. The mayor understood her point, so he declared that they would just pray to Lord Demis for the heroes' party's success and safety. However, Van declared that a prayer from a heretic like him wouldn't reach Demis. The Zoltanians stared in shock, completely silent. Lubo called Van's action inappropriate, and he asked him to apologize, but Van refused to take back his words, as he even declared that it was his task to guide the heretics to the right path. Tis couldn't understand his words, as the blessings everyone has are proof that they worship Demis. Gallatin and the priest asked Van if he was aware that his remarks were insulting. But Van stated that their way of living a quiet life was against Demis' scriptures, and he declared that they would be joining him to fight the demon's army as a way to repent. The villagers were anxious after hearing his words, while the mayor declared that they had land to protect and lives to consider. However, Van called their land worthless, and he ordered everyone to cast it aside. Tis understood the situation, so she immediately signaled for Mr. Crawley-Wally to inform Rudy. The mayor couldn't accept Van's rudeness, as he called the land their ancestors developed worthless. But Van thought he didn't do anything wrong as he didn't care about human etiquette. Van noticed that the Zoltanians were angered by his words, so Tis explained that they love Zoltan and their peaceful lives. Van thought it was ridiculous, and he planned to use the Fairy King's shield's mind control magic on him. Nistrom and Esta wanted to stop him, but Lavender prevented them from interfering, and she didn't care whether Van was in the wrong. Esta asked Lubo to take action, but he wanted Van to fail and learn his lesson. He didn't care about the lives that would be lost in the process. Lavender also stopped Tis in her tracks, so Van had all the time to use the Fairy King's shield to brainwash everyone. Luckily, Yarandrala arrived to stop him, and she thought he was more of a villain for using mind control magic. Van was enraged. He easily freed himself from the vines before attacking Yarandrala. Esta wanted to help, but Lavender trapped her with Tis and Mistrom inside a black sphere. Van easily gained the advantage over Yarandrala, but Danon arrived and landed a powerful kick on Van. The duo knew that it would be difficult to beat the hero even with both of them, but they were confused that Van hadn't healed himself yet. However, Van got up while calling them great evils before declaring that he would not succumb to them. Van and Danon were on stalemate after exchanging their first attacks, so Yarandrala's support allowed Danon to land a powerful punch on Van. Van grimaced in pain, but he used his magic to reflect Danon's attack. He was surprised that Danon could endure the wounds he reflected, but Danon thought that the way he fought was not heroic at all for passing on the pain he suffers to others. But Van was proud that he had a skill that would use the enemy's vitality to heal him. He thought it would allow him to fight, no matter how great the evil was. However, their battle was interrupted by the arrival of enraged salt dragons who wanted vengeance for their kin's deaths, and the treasure stolen from them. The salt dragon immediately attacked Van. Yarandrala had intervened to protect the village, but Van actually tried to ambush her. Danon protected her, but he couldn't believe that Van didn't care about the lives of the citizens, as he even wanted the dragons to destroy the land, thinking that it would make the Zoltanians join the war. Danon was enraged, but Van continued reflecting his attacks, and he tried ambushing Yarandrala, who was busy repelling the dragon's attacks. Luckily, Red arrived in time to protect her, and he completely outsmarted Van, as he recovered the Fairy King's shield with Mr. Crawley-Wally's help. Afterwards, he dashed outside the village while luring the salt dragons with the shield. After thanking Mr. Crawley Wally, Red conversed with the dragons, but they only listened to him after sensing Rudy's intense bloodlust from afar. Red confirmed if they had come for the shield, and the dragon affirmed, saying that it was entrusted to them by the previous demon lord. After recovering the shield, the dragons immediately left, but they didn't forget to warn Red about the hero. Van attacked Red with his holy blade, but Red easily dodged, and he thought Van had failed as a hero as he didn't care about the damage he was causing around him. Red easily suppressed Van, as Van's focus was solely on his blessing, and he didn't refine his swordsmanship. Red also prevented Van from using his magic, so Van realized that he was buying time. He thought it was useless against a hero like him who could fight without resting. However, Rudy suddenly showed up behind him, and her punch broke his teeth before he was thrown away into the forest. Van wondered who Rudy was, but Rudy stated that she was someone not important, and she hoped he would forget her when he regained consciousness, and she left with Red before his party could arrive. Van thought it was his end, and he accepted it, thinking that his job was to fight evil and not to win. However, he thought he met Rudy for a reason, and after getting healed, he declared that it was his role to kill Rudy, and only then would he become the true hero. Van continued slaying monsters, determined to buff his blessings in order to kill Rudy, thinking that he would only become the true hero after accomplishing this. Red gathered everyone in order to plan how to deal with Van. Albert explained that Esta warned him about Van's imminent return to Zoltan, as he had gained confidence after slaying monsters in the southern seas, and he was even declaring he would kill Rudy with a smile on his face, so Tis thought he was creepy. Danon wanted to beat up Van after hearing everything, but Yerendrala and Red agreed that it was better to drive him out of Zoltan without fighting. After taking out the portraits drawn by Tis, the group started discussing Van's party. Albert explained that although Van was the 8th prince of the Flamberge kingdom, he was raised in a monastery, as some royal and noble families see raising their own children as a shame. Rit had also heard about it, but she declared that she and Red would raise their kids with love, and Rudy was glad to hear it. Meanwhile, Tis concluded that Van's zeal was because of his upbringing. Red agreed, and he added that Van arrived at the Great Last Wall proclaiming himself as a hero, and the church recognized him as such. After this, he spent all his time hunting monsters to raise his blessings level. Yerendrala thought it was the biggest issue, despite the hero's blessing not allowing one to abandon their comrades. Van still believed that developing his blessing comes before saving his comrades. Danon got more pissed the more he heard about Van. He believed that Van wasn't fit to be a hero at all, while Rit couldn't understand him at all. Rudy explained that in Van's world, all that existed was the Almighty, and him alone, and it allowed him to trust his beliefs unconditionally, without wavering or losing heart. They started discussing Lavender next, and although Mistrom couldn't recognize her new appearance, she knew Lavender was the dark shadow who could control lightning that she had met in the past. And she's not someone Mistrom could fight in her current state, so she asked Rit and Yerendrala to handle her. Yerendrala thought that fighting Lavender would cause too much collateral damage, but she also didn't know how to talk her down. However, Rit declared that she would talk to her, and despite everyone's concern, she was certain that she was the best for the job, as they were both in love. Everyone was confused by her reason, but Rit thought she could use this similarity to negotiate. Red didn't oppose this, but he asked Danon to accompany her, as he would be handling Lubo with Yerendrala. Albert explained that Lubo was a former peasant who made a name for himself by relying on his cardinal blessing. But he was ruthless when sating his desires, not hesitant to rely on bribes and embezzlements. And although Lubo knew Red's identity, he thought disguising himself would be enough, and he also asked Rudy to completely hide her identity with Tiss's help. The group was determined to protect Rudy and Zoltan. Rudy thanked everyone before their meeting was concluded. While making the necessary preparations, Red noticed that Tiss was sitting alone outside while in deep thought. He asked what was wrong, and Tiss explained that she didn't know what she could do before Van's return to Zoltan. She knew it would be difficult to kill him after witnessing his strength and personality. She also asked why Rudy and Van were so different, despite having the same hero blessing. Red thought it was because of their different mindsets, as Rudy was an indomitable hero who would not succumb to any foe she came up against, while Van was trying to be an invincible hero who didn't care about his foes and was solely focused on winning. And between Rudy, who's prepared to fight any opponent, and Van, who doesn't care at all, they agreed they wouldn't choose Van's approach, and Tiss was certain that if she also relied on her surefire techniques similar to Van's, it would lead to her defeat. Red concluded that Van relied on his blessings alone, while Rudy was more than her blessings. Tiss thought it was thanks to him guiding Rudy, although Red stated that he just wanted to make sure that Rudy would learn how to protect herself, Tis was glad that Rudy had him around, and she thought Van didn't have someone like him. She also felt better after understanding the difference between Rudy and Van. Meanwhile, Van's party had arrived in Zoltan. Esta tried to convince Lubo that it wasn't worth risking Van's life in a place like Zoltan. However, Lubo thought they needed information, and he asked Esta to investigate the girl who had beat up Van. Lavender didn't say anything, but she was watching Esta's actions. Gallatin and the mayor were stressed by Van's return, but Miss Strom convinced them to leave everything to Red's group, and they agreed that it was the best option. Esta introduced Albert to Van and the others, and he asked how their trip was using the airship. Van was satisfied after slaying some monsters to level his blessings, so Lavender declared that he would beat Rudy this time. However, Van was fuming after recalling his defeat, and he was determined to find and beat Rudy right away. But Lubo stopped him, and he decided that they would gather some information first. While trying to cheer Van up, Lavender noticed Rit and Danon spying on them. She immediately confronted them, declaring that she would beat them up. However, she was confused that Rit knew about her real identity, but she was enraged when Rit stated that she transformed herself into a fairy, knowing that her real terrifying appearance wouldn't endear Van. However, she calmed down when Rit asked to talk about love, declaring that she had someone she loved, similar to Lavender. Rit introduced herself as a former princess of Longevia, and Lavender got interested, thinking that she had a prince or a knight as a lover. But she was even more excited when she thought Rit had eloped with Red after hearing that they were living as commoners in Zoltan. They agreed that one must be willing to sacrifice for love. However, while Rit wanted to grow and change for the better with Red, Lavender wanted Van to stay the way he is, even if it led to his death. She was willing to follow after him, and she thought she couldn't wish for a better ending. Afterwards, Rit asked Lavender to convince Van to leave Zoltan, as it was also for his sake. Lavender thought she had a point. However, she still refused. Rit didn't try to convince her further. Lavender was glad about it, as she declared that she would have killed Rit if she insisted. They had a toast afterwards, but Lavender thought Rit was weird, as she wished they could have more peaceful chats in the future. Red approached Lubo right after he lost a bet on a race. He offered to help Lubo win his bet in exchange for sparing him some time to chat. Yarandrala was worried Red would lose, but Red was well prepared, as he had Mr. Crawley Wally's help to make sure they would win. Lubo was satisfied after winning big in the race, so he agreed to come to a restaurant with Red. And his mood got even better after trying the wine and dish that Yarandrala had served. Seeing this, Red finally decided to start discussing Van with him. Lubo thought Red had some complaints about Van's behavior, so he asked Red to overlook this as he was still a child. But he would be responsible for saving the world in the future. However, he was surprised when Red brought up the girl who had beaten up Van. Lubo immediately asked about her, but he thought it was ridiculous when Red explained that she was something left behind by ancient elves. However, he started to believe Red when Red showed him the ancient elven writings on the Ogre King's body. He explained that this Ogre King was highly intelligent and capable of wielding weapons, and it could be a biological weapon left behind by the ancient elves in Zoltan, so the girl who beat up Van could be the same. And the reports from the Thieves Guild support this theory. He also added that these biological weapons would crawl out of the ancient elven ruins to protect Zoltan if ever the demon army reached Zoltan. Lubo agreed to advise Van to leave Zoltan after hearing that it would be humanity's loss if one of Van or Rudy died. However, he was troubled, as Van had been disobedient to him recently. After this discussion, Albert visited Red's house with Esta, but Lavender was watching them. Lavender asked Rit to bring Esta out. Van and Lubo doubted that Esta would betray them, but Lavender was confident that Rit was just covering for Esta. Danon was worried about the situation, but Red was confident that things would work out, and Rit agreed to let them see Esta. Tis didn't know what Red was planning as she watched Lavender try to have Esta confess that she was a traitor. Esta felt insulted by Lavender's accusations. She explained that she was investigating Rudy's identity like Lubo wanted, so she approached Rit, who was a former adventurer, for information. Afterwards, Rit introduced her love to Lavender, and Van was surprised that it was the person who stole the Fairy King's shield. Lubo was equally surprised, as he knew both Danon and Red, while Van explained to the confused Lavender that they were part of the hero's party. He also asked why they were in Zoltan, so Danon showed his arm before Esta explained that she came to meet the duo to get some information. Afterwards, Van asked why they had attacked him. Danon wasn't pleased with his question, while Red explained that they would stop anything that would make the people of Zoltan suffer. Van argued that he just wanted them to return to a life guided by blessings, so Red emphasized that he tried using mind control magic before putting the salt dragons to attack the town, which were things a hero was supposed to stop instead. Van disagreed, stating that he just followed his hero's blessings impulses. However, Red declared that he would need a long chat with him as the hero's guide. Van was surprised, and he got confused as he couldn't understand how Red still had anything left to live for after completing his tasks as a guide. Lavender was upset with Red because of Van's confusion, and she declared that she wouldn't let anyone get in the way of her love. Red explained that no one is trying to, and she declared how much she loves Red and their life in Zoltan, so Lavender's anger turned to amazement. However, Esta thought they should leave things as is for now, and Lubo agreed that they could discuss things at a later date. Red agreed, saying it was better to talk once everyone was thinking straight. Tist asked if they should have pushed further, but Red stated that fooling Van wouldn't work, so they had to rely on negotiation, so Danon thought it sounded like a pain. However, Red was also uncertain if there was a solution acceptable for Van, as he only cared about blessings. But he thought he could also take advantage of his guide blessing because of this, and they just needed to be cautious during their talks. Afterwards, Red visited Rudy and brought her some food, which made her happy. However, Red explained that he might avoid visiting her for a while, and Rudy understood, as she knew it was because of Lavender's ability to determine a person's location. Rudy thought that Demis wouldn't really let her have a quiet life, while Red thought that Demis was probably hoping the new hero would defeat Rudy, who had set her aside. However, Red wanted to ruin her plan by preventing the two heroes from meeting, and this made Rudy happy. At the same time, Megria came to inform Rudy and Tist that someone had accepted their herb collection request. The duo was glad, while Red asked Megria if they had any tasks that mainly involved exploring with the side of combat. Tist thought Zoltan wouldn't have a quest like this, but surprisingly, there was actually one, and she asked Red to head to the Adventurers Guild for the details. Red explained that he accepted a mission to hunt sea bogas, which drain a human's life force, and worse, they specifically target children. Hearing this, Dana wanted to take them out quickly. Red agreed. However, everyone was surprised when he wanted to bring Van with him on this quest. They thought Red was out of his mind, but Rit thought it was a chance to show Lavender how she and Red interact, while Red thought they could also find out more about Lavender's abilities. Danon wanted to join after hearing this, but Red refused sternly. Rudy heard of the situation from Tiss and she was a little frustrated that she couldn't help her dear brother. The next day, Red thanked Van for joining the quest, but Van stated that it was his job as they approached the Baga's location. Van declared that as a hero he was always prepared to fight, so Red noticed that it was just a part of his life. Van didn't deny it and he thought it was the case for all the living creatures because of their blessings, but he felt uncertain when Red just stared at him without saying anything. However, Lavender interrupted them so they had to focus on the fight, although she wasn't pleased to receive orders from Red. After locating the sea bogas, Red reminded Van to stay alert. However, Van was more curious why Red was using average equipments despite having to fight his whole life. Red tried to explain, but Lavender interrupted them to warn them that the sea bogas had noticed their presence. Rit provided support while Red and Van engage against the monsters. Lavender wanted to wipe them out, but she stopped casting her spell as she seemed worried of something. Meanwhile, Van was fighting without caring about defense as he relied on his healing hands, and he thought defending was a sign of pulling punches against evil. Red disagreed, but he reminded Van to focus on the battle. It didn't take them long to wipe out all the sea bogas at the shore. Afterwards, Red asked Van if he counted how many monsters he had slain, but Van stated that he didn't, as he only cared about slaying evil. So Red explained that he had killed 28 compared to Van's 18, which meant that he had higher contributions even though Van was supposed to be stronger as the hero. Van fell silent, but Red explained that as the guide, he would show Van the way, and that Van would only be the finished article as the hero once he surpassed him in all aspects. Van agreed, but Lavender wasn't pleased, and she told Van that the current him was fine, so Red thought the way she accepted Van's weakness would just ruin him. Afterwards, they decided to return, but Rit noticed the tracks of other bogies that were going back and forth to the village, which meant that they had successfully abducted some children. Van wanted to save them right away. However, he looked sad and was helpless, as he didn't have any skill for tracking, so Red and Rit asked him to leave it to them. Red asked him to be happy as they were present to help, but Lavender asked him to stop messing with Van, and she declared that Van doesn't need any tracking skills since she could detect any living creatures wherever the wind could go. The sea bogas tracks led them to a cave, and Rit easily found and sneaked close to the bogas, although she got worried when Van's armor created so much noise while he was following behind. After Red counted the bogas, Van immediately charged and killed them. However, Red still had to defend him from the surviving monsters. It didn't take them long to locate the missing child, and she regained consciousness after hearing that Van was the hero. She also hugged him after realizing that she was finally safe, despite Lavender's continuous complaints. The kid's parents thanked Van. He stated that it wasn't necessary, but he fell silent when the little girl thanked him. Esther was surprised when she heard that Van listened to Red's advice, but this also made her depressed. She also couldn't believe that Rit could get through to Lavender. Rit explained that it was because they were both in love, although it didn't make Esther feel any better. She was impressed that Red and Rit made so much progress in such a short time, but this made her lose confidence in herself. However, Albert declared that she had made everything happen, as she was the one who sent him to inform Red about Van. He also declared that he knew how hard Esther was working, and she immediately felt better after hearing all of this. Red thought they made a perfect duo. Esther felt embarrassed, while Albert was completely clueless. Meanwhile, Van told himself that a hero never loses his way. Lubo explained to Van that the girl who beat him was not a threat to humanity, so he didn't have a reason to remain in Zoltan to fight her. Van refused to listen, as his blessing was telling him to stay. Lube explained that he had been strange since his mission with Red, as he had started holding himself in his room to pray. Worried about what he might do, she and Lubo took turns checking on him. At the same time, Tis arrived to ask for some help looking for a missing child in the forest, as she and Rudy were unable to take action, still avoiding Van. Albert volunteered to help, confident that he was still familiar with the forest of Zoltan and determined to make up for what he used to be and to act in a way that befits Esther's partner. Esther was flustered after hearing this. She was annoyed with Red and Rit's stare, but they agreed that they could trust Albert on this matter, so Tis gave him all the information she had so far. Meanwhile, Rudy was checking her herb farm when she seemed to notice something. So the little child came running out of concern, and she asked Albert not to kill the monster. Albert explained that he was an adventurer looking for her, as her parents were worried that she got lost. The girl explained that she was just playing with Kurukuru when the ogre appeared. Kurukuru protected her against the ogre, but he and the other fays were terrified of something. At the same time, Van and Lavender arrived. Although Van was glad that the little girl was safe, Albert noticed that something was wrong, so he wanted to leave with the girl right away. However, Van declared that they had to slay Kurukuru first, stating that it had lured the little girl into the forest. And she easily subdued Van, so Lavender had to interfere, fight in front of Van. Lavender declared how she hated Esther from the first time she had seen her, but while she was channeling her magic, a water archfey interfered. This enraged Lavender further, but the archfey just mocked her for using a cute fairy's appearance to hide her real self. Lavender wanted to kill the archfey, hiding. Irandrala asked what their plan would be to deal with the hero and a mythical archfey. However, Red still wanted to talk to Van. He was certain that his words would go through, seeing that Van had started to waver. The group agreed, as both Rudy and Rit trusted Red's judgment. However, they thought he was crazy when he declared that he would fight Van one-on-one. But Red was confident he would win, so they didn't stop death. Van immediately charged at Red, but he was unable to land a single strike, and Red even landed a hit on his head effortlessly. Lavender wanted to help Van, but Rit stopped her, so she finally revealed her real appearance and power out of rage. Danon managed to stop her attacks at first, but he got surrounded by dark clouds before getting electrocuted. Afterwards, Lavender helped Van, who was getting beaten by Red, while Esta and Irandrala strengthened the barrier, realizing that Lavender was stronger than they had expected. Red continued to dominate Van, so Lavender tried helping him, but Rudy easily protected Red before repelling Lavender. However, Van used this chance to channel his magic to create a whirlwind to push everyone away and destroy the barrier. Red dropped to his knees after receiving this attack, so Van thought it was his victory as he used healing hands to reflect the damages he received from Red. However, Red used the item Rudy had given him to negate the healing hands effect before landing the final blow on Van. Van complained that Red had cheated as he used Rudy's ability to counter his, but Red corrected him, explaining that it was a battle between men and it doesn't solely revolve around their blessings. Van was frustrated, but Red just urged him to release his emotion, as the disappointment he started feeling after realizing that he wouldn't be able to save the girl on his own during their mission was what made him waver. Afterwards, Van lost consciousness, so Red stated that their conversation would continue once he woke up. Lavender was worried while seeing Van unconscious and upset that she couldn't get close enough to him because they were both tied up. After Van regained consciousness, Red asked how he's feeling. Van was still upset after losing to Red, but he's already healed up after receiving some treatment. Van immediately asked about Albert and Lubo, so Red explained that Albert had already regained consciousness while Lubo was still recovering in bed. Van felt relieved, but he started feeling guilty as well. Afterwards, Red had writ leave with Lavender to talk with Van alone. Red asked Van about his blessings, and Van explained that it was back to normal so he wouldn't be hurting anyone anymore. Red immediately released his shackles after this, and he also explained that Van's emotional turmoil must be the reason behind his blessing going berserk. Van agreed, as it was the first time he felt disappointed, and he even questioned if he was really fit to be the hero. Red explained that being a hero was not just about its blessing, as a hero is someone who always acts like one despite wavering and worrying. Van still didn't know what he was supposed to do, so Red thought that Van was still ignorant of the ways of the world. And his lack of perspective was the reason why his sword was weak, as all this time he was trying to win through brute force. Van pouted after hearing Red's words, but Red explained that he is fine as he is, although he would need to start understanding his emotions, accepting that he was human, trusting his friends to give meaning to his sword, and only then would he become stronger and truly become the hero. Red also suggested that he trust Esta some more and talk to her about things that are not limited to being a hero. Van was worried if Esta would still be willing to travel with him. But Red was certain that as long as he wanted to continue as a hero, Esta would be present to guide him, as it was her desire, and if she didn't, she wouldn't have traveled with a brat like him in the first place. Van thought Red was mean, but he couldn't deny what he said. Afterwards, Van asked Red to travel with him, but Red stated that he was Rudy's guide and he wouldn't travel with another hero, so Van could only wish that he met Red before his hero blessing awakened. Red asked Van when his hero's blessing awakened, as he figured out that it wasn't Van's blessing originally. Van explained that his cardinal blessing suddenly changed. He thought it was a miracle by Demis and that he had to give up everything to be a hero. However, Red knew that it was hard for Van to suddenly change paths and lead a completely different life. He asked Van if he was planning to leave right away. Van thought it was the obvious choice, but he realized the right thing to do was to consult his party first, and Red was satisfied to hear it. Afterwards, Van went to thank Lavender for always staying by his side and she was moved after hearing it. Esta visited Lubo to check on his condition, and she was glad that he was fine after seeing him complain that his alcohol and cigar were taken away. Lubo explained that Van asked for his forgiveness, and although this surprised him, he forgave him as he declared that he needed the hero to fulfill his divine ambitions. Lubo thought Esta had Van apologized, but Esta explained that all she did was hear him out, and it was his decision to apologize to even Albert and the mayor. After hearing this, Lubo wanted to bring Red in their party as he changed Van so much in such a short time. But he knew it was impossible. Lubo also figured out Esta's real identity, and he thought she was a bad liar when she still denied it. Van also visited the kids at the church. Tanta was still vigilant because of what Van tried to do in the past, but they immediately accepted his apology and even wanted to play with him. Lavender was annoyed that Van had to go around and apologize to people. She thought he was like a different person. But she told Rit that she loved Van even more. Afterwards, Rit left to get some meat and snacks. Lavender went to look for Red, and she declared how she still hates him for hurting Van. But she also gave him a blue sapphire for looking after Van, as she had heard from Rit how Red was looking for a gem to put in her engagement ring. Lavender explained that she could easily get any gems from the fairies. Red thought the archfays were amazing, and he thanked Lavender for the gem. Lavender reminded Red not to mess up before going back to drink with Rit. Red brought the blue sapphire to Mogram the next day. Mogram was amazed by its quality, and he thought he could make the greatest ever engagement ring with it. And he even closed his shop for the day to craft the ring himself. After a few days, Red prepared a romantic dinner for Rit, where he declared how he fell in love with her the first time they met before asking her to marry him. And although he thought he wasn't a good match for a princess like Rit, Red promised to make her happy. Rit was in tears. She swore all of her love to Red before promising that she would stay by his side for as long as she's alive. She thought it was a dream come true after putting on the ring, and she immediately embraced Red. The group gathered to celebrate Red and Rit's special day. Irandrala thanked Rit for bringing her special friend Red happiness, while Esta was surprised by their engagement. However, Danon was more surprised by her change. So both Albert and Van got curious after hearing how different she was compared to her past self. Rudy, Tis, and Mr. Crawley Wally also congratulated Red and Rit, and it brought Rudy joy to see them happy. However, Tis was surprised when Rudy declared that she would be next. Meanwhile, Van was still not used to how everyone was living their lives in Zoltan. However, as Red knew that Van's real desire was to fight as a hero, he was certain that his journey would be paved with difficulties. so he wanted to play his part as a guide while Van was still in Zoltan. Thank you all for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this series as much as I did, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on any new series recaps coming out on this channel.